First, a disclaimer that, like most of you, I am just one of the many grassroots volunteers, so this is nothing official. Therefore, what I'm saying here are my own views and opinions, and not necessarily those of the Mastriano campaign. I apologize in advance if what you read and or listen to may sound strong and intemperate, but I feel it may be necessary. We have come too far to lay down our spiritual arms and surrender to the enemy who would enslave us. In the face of evil, I tend to jump into my polemical writing mode. Articles and media commentary from so-called experts are all weighing in with their election evaluation and analysis. Reading and listening to some of them brings forth irritation and rage, followed by nausea and demoralization. Much in their writings we would disagree with, while some statements are simply naive and others patently false. Armchair writers commenting in hindsight most often have no inside knowledge as we do. Hence, they speak out of ignorance. Without that familiarity of all we have known and been part of, they can only speak from the status quo of a political game book that has brought our government to the level of decadence that exists today, and they would have us follow that age-old pattern of compromising back-office smoke-filled room wheeling and dealings to satisfy the establishment. These political pundits of conservatism, still in love with the grand old party GOP, failed to understand how Doug's campaign was not traditional, but rather one based upon true grassroots representing we the people. It was a campaign of intentional rejection of tyranny and an affront to the declining morality of a failing society that generally has rejected godliness, righteousness, and justice. Moreover, with small exception, so much media analysis of the results speak nothing to the voter fraud, vote flipping, illegal electioneering, and ballot dumps reminiscent of 2020 that undermines the elections of a free Commonwealth and nation and is stealing election results once again. We must not concede, and the results must be challenged. And this challenge must put forth the clear evidence in the very summons and complaint delivered to the court to justify a judicial trial, avoiding being dismissed without hearing. What remains then is to see whether or not the courts will have a desire for truth and finally show courage, unlike what they did in 2020. I really want the campaign to challenge these results and to file lawsuits, even as was done in 2020 for Trump. There's nothing to be lost, any more so than anything that could have been lost by entering the governor's race in the first place. The stand for truth and the demonstration of courage, even in the face of losing a battle, far outweighs the risk of injury and loss in fighting and the shame of cowardice. Many of the veterans who we honor today on Veterans Day knew the risk of loss, and some gave their all for the fight. They fought for freedom. They fought for the protection of lives, and they fought for our rights in the Constitution. Doug Mastriano is our veteran of the day, and we owe it to him for his selfless sacrifice in service to our country and our Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I should also add that other factors, in addition to fraud, warrant our continued stand for truth. Let us remain vigilant and remember the onslaught of the media, so biased and so deceitful against Doug Mastriano. Let us remain vigilant and remember how most of the state Pennsylvania GOP party did not stand with Doug, did not support him, did not endorse him, and did not give one penny to his campaign. Let us remain vigilant and remember how so many registered Republicans and conservatives listened to and believed the lying commercial advertisements put out by the Shapiro campaign with his $40+ million, mostly derived from outside Pennsylvania, likely George Soros and others trying to undermine our free elections. And my final complaint is with professed to be Christians and many professing so-called Christian churches. Let us remain vigilant and remember so many sitting in the pews who have lost their way and do not understand the spiritual warfare that we are in right now. Let us remain vigilant and remember that many of these church leaders have allowed themselves to be gagged and neutered so as to be ineffective and for any good in our society and our elections. Sadly, so many of these, if they have not learned by now and cannot be turned on to the truth, then they simply have no switches. Remember those who have rejected a faithful, God-fearing, Jesus-acknowledging, born-again servant of Christ, Douglas Mastriano. Do not give up the fight for truth. Do not give up the fight for Doug.